All right, everyone. Well, whoever's going to watch this, I apologize for pushing this off. If anyone was waiting for this, but busy day, busy day, busy day. It's my day off, and I'm trying to do a bunch of different things here. I'm going to make an announcement over on my original channel in case anyone wants to partake in this. This is my smallest YouTube channel. So let me go over there and share this to my community tab. I had a really nice stream over there yesterday over a bit of a controversial topic. But let's see. Yep, there we are. We're live. Oh, there's one watching. Who's watching? Well, it said one was watching. Oh, that might be me. Let me share this. Okay. All right, that's been shared. So let me go back to my entertainment and media channel so I can see the metadata come in real time. All right. So everyone, I'm going to play the intro and then I'll see you on the other side, and then I'll get to what I want to get to today. My favorite episode of ER. All right.
That's good. All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar, and this is Big Discussions 76, Entertainment and Media. First of all, please like the stream, please share it, and please subscribe to my channel. That also goes for those of you watching it on the playback. I think that for this channel, because I have 4, and with this channel being my smallest, I think right now, because I'm at 278 subs here.
So I'm just under 300. So I don't feed this channel enough based upon time. If I was a full-time YouTuber, if I could walk away from my day job, I could probably feed all 4 of the channels adequately. Because a part of being a YouTube content creator is not just creating quality content that the algorithm and that the YouTube guidelines like, but also consistency. So, okay. Oh, Kareem Austin, thank you for stopping through. Thank you for stopping through. Appreciate that. Kareem, I'm not posting this just for you because you stopped through, but for people watching on the playback as well. It'll be a while before I get a super chat over here. And geez, who knows if I'll still be YouTubing in a couple of years. Who knows what the future holds. If you're watching on the playback, or if you're watching live and you want to drop something in the tip jar, whether that's 50 cent, a dollar, a nickel, whatever, my Cash App and PayPal are there. And so 2 items before I jump in, because it's my day off, but I have a lot to do. Please consider joining the Big Words LLC newsletter. That is here. There is a link in the description box below. There's a greeting, and then the subscribe button is there. You just enter in your email address, and I want a few more names before I send the first one out. And yeah, so that would be very helpful for me as a way to advertise my content, video and print. So consider joining that. And also one of the things I'm going to be talking about there as the months go on is my book project, The Engineers, a Western New York Basketball Story. I've talked about, excuse me, I've talked about this over my sports channel, and I started talking about this in a live stream about something else yesterday, but I'm going to talk about it here on this channel from a literary writing perspective more. And I've published several promotional essays for this thus far, the latest being on Cliff Robinson, a basketball player, a deceased basketball player from my hometown of Buffalo, who went on to the NBA and played at UConn. It's being very well received over in some of the basketball groups on Facebook. Wow, that Peter Benton gif. I'm going to talk about who Peter Benton is, but the way that's moving, it's tricking my eyes to think that the screen is actually that I'm actually moving. Okay, so let's jump in. So Peter Benton, those of you who are familiar with ER, you know who Peter Benton is. But I wanted to do a stream on my favorite episode of the TV show ER. And over on this channel, I talk about media. I talk about books, TV shows, movies, literary works, those kinds of things. And so Hulu, I've been streaming a lot of shows on Hulu since I got my Fire Stick and since I got Hulu. And I watched Snowfall there, though you can catch it on FX as well. I've been watching The Wonder Years. I watched what else did I watch on Hulu? Our Kind of People. I watched up to a certain point and then I just didn't go back to it. So I've been watching a lot of things on Hulu, some movies as well. And then I think I started with St. Elsewhere. Which I thought was the forerunner to ER, but someone said no, it was something else. But I started watching St. Elsewhere, which a young Denzel Washington was in addition to David Morse and Howie Mandel and other actors and actresses, other notable actors and actresses. And then the Hulu algorithm brought up ER. And so ER if you look at the screen here, it was a television series that spanned from 1994 to 2009. Each episode was about 44 minutes. The other 15 minutes they filled in with commercials. And so this started in 1994. That would have been just as I was finishing high school. So I, went to college. I didn't really watch the first 2 to 3 seasons, and then once I got to my HBCU, Johnson C. Smith University, I found myself watching it. Just like I found myself watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which I didn't start watching right away. And for those few episodes that I saw, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the show. So I'm going to just talk about what the show is about, some of the cast members, and then I'm going to work my way to my favorite episode. Because there was an episode when I started binge watching it on Hulu that I was specifically looking for, and I found it, and I'm going to talk about it towards the end of the stream. So ER takes place in Chicago, and this right here on this, that looks like a DVD cover. That's not the original lineup because George Clooney's not there. Let's see, Noah Wiley is there. Sherry Strenfield, I think it is. She's not there. Yeah, that's not the entire original lineup. But it takes place in Chicago at County Hospital, and it tracks the daily lives and happenings in the emergency room at County Hospital. And so you see what happens to these characters in the emergency room. And we've all seen doctors shows, and I didn't watch Grey's Anatomy, so I have to watch Grey's Anatomy. But you see what it's like to work in an ER when patients come in and they've been in traffic accidents, or a person has had a heart attack, or a youth, as I'll describe, was involved in some form of gang violence, or there was a fire. You see firsthand what it's like to work in the ER, and also to some degree to work as paramedics and EMTs. So you see that. You see experienced staff working and using their expertise to fix people, as Dr. Mark Green said in the episode I'm going to tell you about. And then you see younger physicians and surgeons in training come into the clinic, and you see them start to learn their craft. I'm thinking about John Carter, and I'm also thinking about Omar Epps' character, who got killed off in the last season. I'm thinking about, well, his name is probably on the cast list that I'm going to show in a second. Jay Bones, what's going on? So Kareem Austin is here. Thank you for stopping through, Kareem. Hey, Kareem, I'm also watching Winning Time, the rise of the Laker dynasty. So I don't know if you guys are watching that, but I've watched, I think, the first 1.5 episodes, and it's really good. It's really good. Winning Time. So I'll probably review that as well. Jay Bones says, "What's up? What's going on, Jay Bones? I was just over in the TRR before I came over here. So I don't know if you've listened in on what they're talking about over there, but I was over there." Kareem says, "I started watching ER because I was big fans of Anthony Edwards and Eric LaSalle." Yep. Let's see. Jay Bone says, "How are you doing today?" Good. It's my day off, but on your day off, you still have things to do unless you've wiped everything. If you've wiped everything off your slate, but my slate is just, it seems to replenish itself. So Jay Bone says the 90s ER was excellent. Kareem says, "Yes, I'm watching it too." So he's talking about Winning Time. Yeah, that's a Roger. I was over listening to Roger and partaking a little bit. I added my 2 cents in. Okay, so that's what the show is about. So you have emergency surgeons, emergency room surgeons, and emergency room physicians. And okay, I mentioned people involved in traffic accidents. I mentioned elderly people who may have experienced a heart attack or something else. It may, in some instances, it's um, people in fires. In some instances, it might have been a child who fell off a tree. George Clooney's character, Dr. Doug Ross, he was the resident pediatrician. So you have these, and you also have the nurses. You have the nurses and technicians like Juliana Margulies and Gloria Rubin and Deezer D, and so you have this entire ecosystem of doctors and nurses and technicians, and in some instances EMTs and paramedics. You have this whole ecosystem managing the day-to-day crises in the city of Chicago. And I guess this would qualify as a trauma center. Hey, are you guys familiar with the Benji Wilson story? I might do something on that here or over on my sports channel. But speaking of Chicago, Benji Wilson was at Simeon High School in Chicago. Benji Wilson, number 25. You know what? Let me pull Benji up just for the people watching now and those watching on the playback. Okay, we're going to take a quick break from ER and just talk about Benji Wilson for a second. And there's a reason I'm doing this. If people in the audience, whether you're watching this live or on the playback, if you haven't watched this documentary, this was narrated by Wood Harris. This was a really good documentary. When Benji was in his prime at Simeon, that was 1984, 85. So I was 9 or 10 years old. So I didn't know. There was no internet back then. So I didn't know this kid was alive or that he got brutally murdered. But the way Benji Wilson died was this. He got involved in some drama and some foolishness with two thugs from the neighborhood. He was already on his way to going to a big time Division I college. He probably would have gone to Illinois to play with Kendall Gill and Kenny Battle and those guys. He probably would have had a long NBA career had he stayed healthy. But he got shot. And at that time, paramedics in Chicago were not mandated to take patients to the nearest trauma center. So they took Benji to the nearest hospital, and he did not get care right away. So he wound up bleeding and losing blood for too long before the surgeons were able to get to him and try to stop the bleeding and fix his gunshot wound. So he kind of bled to death, suffered brain damage. Then his mother had to make the decision to just pull the plug. So I'm saying that to say ER, and I'm going to probably review this at some point, but ER, I believe it constitutes or it takes place in a trauma center. Because when you watch the show, there's some very grisly things that they have to attend to. So, and that's a major part of the show. And that's a major part of the show, at least in the early stages, was these patients who need care coming into the ER. That's not the way I want to show. Yep, J Bones. Yep, Simeon Vocational. Yep, that's the same school Derrick Rose and Jabari Parker played at. So that's a major part of the show is that the EMTs they're rushing in these victims, these car crash victims, these elderly people who've had heart attacks or whatever. And then, the music, it builds up, and then the EMTs are telling them, okay, we got a trauma victim here. He's got 3rd-degree burns. He's missing blood. We found him after 30 minutes, and they're explaining it to the ER staff, and then they're rushing them into the emergency room. And then the music builds to a crescendo. They all lift the gurney up, put it on the operating table, and then music goes like that. So that's something that was unique to this show at that time. And then you get to, the camera goes around, and you hear them start to diagnose the patient. Okay, I need an IV push. What's his blood oxygen level? Da, 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 da. We're gonna have to intubate. Can you do this? Can you do this? Carter, do you have this? Okay, tell the operating room that they're coming up right now. So that's a major part of the show. So there's a whole. It gives you a nice look into what it means to work in an emergency room in a major metropolitan city. So you see crisis situations like pileups on the expressway. You see what happens during snowstorms. You see them have to tell loved ones that their spouse or their father or their mother didn't survive the surgery. You see, in the case of George Clooney's Doug Ross, you see him working with children. He's good working with children. He's a master at it. You see all kinds of things in terms of the medical profession and what it means to work in an emergency room. But what I really enjoy about the show, and I was thinking about this as I was thinking about doing the stream, was you see the human interactions between the staff and the patients as well. But you see that these are real people. These are real people. They're not just surgeons and nurse practitioners and physician assistants and EMTs. These are also people. These are people who have families. These are people who have relationships. These are people going through personal struggles. And you see that there are things from their personal lives that are on their minds when they're at work. And then they have to figure out even just how to work together there in the emergency room. And there are all kinds of challenges that they experience working together. The very first episode, which I didn't see until I got Hulu, it follows, I would say the main character in this, of course, there are several main characters, but in terms of this first crop, the first iteration of the cast, I would say the main character is Anthony Edwards, Mark Green. So this link is cool because it tells you how long the show went, but also how long each cast member played their role in the show. So some of these individuals were on from the beginning, and they went up to 2009. And then some of these folks came on in the early 2000s until the show ended. But I think the main character is Mark Green. And in the first episode, the first episode starts with him trying to get sleep in the there's a room where the surgeons and the physicians where they sleep, because for those of you who don't know, doctors, emergency surgeons, they work around the clock, and sometimes they don't get any sleep for days on end. So that episode literally starts with someone coming in the room, you're at the bottom of his feet, so he's waking up like, what's going on? And I said, Dr. Green, we need you to come out. There's this and this. There's this and this. So he puts his glasses on, he goes out there and he starts his day. And you see that with pretty much all the doctors in this show. He's kind of nerdy, but he's like the leader of the group. He eventually becomes the attending physician, and he has his own set of challenges. His wife is a lawyer. She's trying to get her career off the ground, and they're trying to figure out whether or not to live in Chicago or Milwaukee. And you could see early on he's trying to juggle his career and he's trying to keep her happy. And at some point, the relationship fractures and she divorces him. So that's a thing. You have the master and apprentice dynamic with Eric LaSalle's Peter Benton and Noah Wiley's John Carter. So John Carter is a resident. He comes on. Dr. Peter Benton is a very ambitious, a very driven surgeon. Sometimes he's very cold. Sometimes he's very callous, and he flogs Dr. Carter a lot. But oftentimes that's what mentors do. And so there's this very, very cool back and forth with them where Dr. Carter is trying to prove himself, and Eric LaSalle, Dr. Benton, is continually flogging him. Early on, you don't like Peter Benton because he's too intense, but as the series goes on, they start to humanize him, and I think that in large part occurs when he starts to they show his romance with Carla Reese, played by Lisa Nicole Carson, and they have the baby, and he starts to become humanized. Let's see. Yep, I remember one of the characters caught HIV. That was Jeannie Bollet, played by Gloria Rubin, right here. So she's a physician assistant. She comes in, and there's actually a little bit of a romance between her and Dr. Benton, because Dr. Benton and his sister, they're taking care of his mother, who's elderly, and Jeannie is a home care nurse or something like that. So she helps Peter take care of his mother. They have a little romance, but she's still married. She's married to Michael Beach. Michael Beach, his character gives her HIV, and then that's a whole sub thread of the show. I'm just going to run through the original cast here really quickly. You could see how big the cast was over the years. Noah Wiley, he played John Carter. Laura Innes, she played Carrie Weaver. She came in, I think, season 2 or 3. She was the one walking with the cane. I liked her character. Laura Cerrone, she played Nurse Trini Marquez, very attractive. Dr. Green had a little thing going with her. She was a nurse. Deezer D, how many of you guys remember him from CB4? I think he was a rapper at some point. He played Malik. He was one of the nurses. Let's see, Abby Lockhart. Yeah, I'm not up to that season yet. Luca Kovac. Yvette Freeman, Nurse Haley Adams. She's one of the nurses. Anthony Edwards, I already discussed him. Dr. Peter Benton, discussed him. Emily Wagner, I don't remember her. She plays Doris Pickman. Alex Kingston, she starts in the episode that I'm going to talk about right now. That was 1997. Sherry Stringfield, she played Susan Lewis. She played Susan Lewis. She was another doctor in the ER. She had a little, she was good friends with Dr. Mark Green. She had a little thing with her sister, Abby, who was a little bit crazy. She took care of her baby for a little while, and then she decides to move out to Arizona to be closer to her family. And then at that point, her and Mark Green, they have this. Mark is married, so they're friends, but there's a mutual. They have feelings for each other, but at least up to this point, she moves to Arizona, and they don't revisit that. So it's a love that goes unfulfilled. Let's see. Mekhi Phifer comes in 2002. Oh, Linda Cardellini, she comes in 2003. Paul McCrane, he plays Robert Romano. He comes in 1997. Yep. Let's see. Ming Na Wen, Jing Mei Chen, she comes in 1995. Lydia, Ellen Crawford, she plays Nurse Lydia. I'm going to tell you guys something. Nurse Lydia, I thought Nurse Lydia, she's middle-aged in the show. I thought Nurse Lydia was kind of cute. She marries some police officer, but I thought she was an attractive woman. Connie Marie Brazelton, Nurse Connie Olegario. She's part of the original crew. George Clooney, Doug Ross, Gloria Rubin, Jeannie Boulay. Let's see. Brian Lester. He played Brian Dumar. I don't remember him. John Aylward plays Dr. Handspaw. Kind of ornery, kind of military-like. I like Dr. Handspaw. See how big this cast is. It went from 1994 to 2009. I'm just going to skip through to, William H. Macy played Dr. Morgenstern. He comes up in this episode I'm going to talk about. Something happens to him. Let's see. Lisa Nicole Carson, Carla Reese. Yep. She had the baby with Dr. Benton. Loved her from the first time I saw her in Love Jones. Of course, I think she was an Ally McBeal. Candy Alexander, she plays Peter Benton's sister. Let's see. Christine Harnos, she played Dr. Green's wife, the lawyer. She became disillusioned with the marriage and divorced him. Let's see. Vanessa Marquez, she plays Nurse Wendy Goldman. This cast is huge. Let's see. Maria Bello played Anna Delamico. She starts in this episode I'm going to talk about. Cece H. Pounder, Dr. Angela Hicks. She's a prominent character. And then, let's see, Dr. Kaysen. He was dating Dr. Lewis when it first started. Michael Beach, that was Jeannie Boulay's husband. He gave her the HIV. Let's see. I'm trying to get to the end of this thing, but it just keeps going and going and going. Ving Rhames. He's in here somewhere. Okay. Let's see, Dr. Carl Vucelich. Penny Johnson Gerald, she comes in. She was in Deep Space Nine. Ving Rhames, he's Peter Benton's brother-in-law. Okay, this just goes on and on and on, so I'll probably stop. Let me see if I can find Omar Epps' character. Tyra Farrell, she was in it early. A bit of a rival with Peter Benton. Let's see. Everybody was in this. Where's Omar Epps? Don Cheadle made a cameo. Let's see. Who's that? Ron Walker. Okay, they have Omar Epps buried in here. Let me just do a Let me do a quick do the word search. There he is. Omar Epps. I probably passed him. Omar Epps played he was only in for one season. He played Dr. Dennis Gant. So he was also one of Peter Benton's trainees. And while Dr. Carter was able to survive Peter Benton's mentorship, Dr. Gant didn't do so well. But he also, the whole dynamic of you're black, I'm black, you should cut me some slack. They wrote that in, but they also, Dr. Gant also had some personal problems with his girlfriend. And he was in a long distance relationship, and he needed in key moments, he needed John Carter's friendship to help him through it. But John Carter was fooling around with Abby, uh, the head pediatric surgeon. Her name was Abby something or other, and he had a secret romance going on with her, so he couldn't be there for Dr. Gant, and Dr. Gant threw himself in front of a subway and killed himself. So at the end of that episode, both Dr. Carter and Dr. Benton feel some guilt over his dying. Anyway, that being said, that's the cast. That's what the show is about. And I'm only up to season 4. But my favorite episode was season 4, episode 1. So I'm going to take us back to this screen, and I'm just going to walk through some points and talk about why that was my favorite episode. And then I'm going to wrap this stream up because I have some more things to do. That's the wrong screen. By the way, Kareem, yeah, she was. I heard she had some mental issues as well. She might have been bipolar or something, but I heard that she had some mental issues. Anyway, season 4, episode 1 was called The Ambush. And what happens in season 4, episode 1 is I think one of the major backdrops of that episode is Dr. Green getting attacked and beaten within inches of his life right there in the ER. So if you go a few episodes back, Joe Torre from Poetic Justice, his brother was a promising basketball player and was admitted to the ER, and Dr. Green and the staff tried to save him, but they couldn't. So Joe Torre basically threatens Mark Green and says, you know what, if my mom keeps receiving, the family kept being charged for the bill. And he said, if my mom keeps receiving these bills, you're going to see me. So someone attacks Dr. Green in the men's room in the ER. They find him, and he heals, but he's got mental scars. He's got PTSD from the attack. So he's dealing with this in this episode, and he's still wearing a little splint on his hand. So what happens is they agree to allow a camera crew in there to shoot them and to shoot what happens in the ER so that they can make a documentary for PBS. So that's the premise of that particular episode. There's a camera crew following them around. They put up cameras in their break room, and there are cameras following them all around the ER, watching the cases come in, watching the patients come in, and also talking back and forth with them. And as I'll describe, the janitor about what they see every day. And this was one of the first episodes that I saw. In terms of the significance of the name, Dr. Delamico, who's starting at the beginning of that show, she actually says, "Is the camera crew going to ambush us when we're working on a patient?" So I had to watch that a second time for me to make that connection. Anyway, so that's what happens in that episode, and some things that stood out to me. These are just random bullet points that I wrote down as I was watching it last night. There's a scene where the cameraman is talking with the janitor. He's an older black man, and one of the patients threw up on Dr. Carter and ruined his shirt as he was coming in to help out. And at this point, Dr. Carter has switched from being an emergency room resident to a ER resident. So he's making that transition from, being part of the ER staff, part of the surgery staff, to the ER staff. I think I explained that correctly. So this janitor's cleaning up the vomit, and he's a spiritual man. So he's explaining to the cameraman that, I see some strange things in here. God made these bodies, but some terrible things come out of them. He basically says this throw up is just, it's not the worst of what I see, but the worst of what I see is the gore and the blood. So I see some nasty things in here. And he starts going on. He's about to go on into another spiritual discussion about what he sees every day. And then the cameraman has to go. But that was a riveting scene for me. All throughout, there's a musician in the ER, a random kid with his arm broken playing a drum. There's a patient who comes in needing a feeding tube at that time. There's a and the cameraman's recording this. There's a family of four, a husband, a wife, a young boy, maybe 5 to 6 years old, and a toddler sister, and she's got a bite, and they think it's a dog bite, but Dr. Ross says that's not a dog bite. That is the bite of a young, immature Homo sapien. And then they all turn and look at the older brother, who's just kind of sitting there like, and they realize, he bit his sister. And the mom says, "Why'd you bite your sister? You love your sister." So that was a cool scene. And then the gang members. There's a scene where a teenage Hispanic boy was beaten within inches of his leg with a baseball bat by his gang. And so they're bringing him into the ER. He's got a dilated pupil, which means he probably won't see out of that eye anymore. And his sister comes in, and they're in the observation room, taking his vitals, checking his responses, and then Chuni realizes the gang has come into the emergency room. So she's speaking Spanish to them, and she runs to the observation room, says his gang is here, his crew is here. The sister runs out, she starts talking Spanish to him and says, why'd you do this to my brother? You almost beat him to death. That man who tried to help him, you didn't know that man, you threw him over the edge. And the gang member, he looks like your stereotypical South American gangster. He's got his hair slicked back, he's wearing a checker shirt, and he says, "Your brother's a ranker." And then all of a sudden, this melee breaks out in the lobby. The sister jumps on the gang member, and the gang member looks at the camera and says, "Who are you, huh?" He says, "Who are you? Who are you?" And then the melee breaks out, and then that one gang member sees the cameraman recording the whole thing, and then he runs up and he hits the camera. The camera goes blank and it goes to commercial. It is the coolest thing it was one of the coolest things I've seen at that time. While all of this is going on, Dr. Morgenstern, he suffers a heart attack, right? There's a scene where Dr. Ross, Dr. Weaver, and Carol Hathaway, they're sitting and they're talking, and Dr. Ross talks about one of the hardest parts of his job is explaining to families that their loved ones aren't going to make it, or that they didn't make it. And he tells a story of a mother who he broke that news to, and she said, "Well, is he going to be all right?" Because she just couldn't connect in her mind that her son had died. So a major part of what they do in the show is telling the relatives, "Your wife didn't make it, your son didn't make it. I'm sorry. We tried to do everything we could to save them." So that was a cool scene, because it's kind of quiet and it's kind of somber. George Clooney, Juliana Margulies, and I want to acknowledge her. Laura Innes. They all sold that really well. They all sold that really, really well. There was going back to the gang members, they threw a man over the side who tried to stop them from beating the young boy with the baseball bat. That man's name was Theo Johnson. So as a result of him being thrown over wherever that was, those gang members threw him over, he started to suffer, his spinal cord started swelling, and he started suffering paralysis. So they're bringing him, so he tried to do the right thing to help this boy, and now he's suffered this grave injury. So he's in a splint. they're taking his vitals, they're checking his nervous system function, and they're realizing, okay, his spinal cord is swelling. He suffered neck damage. So his blood oxygen is falling. So this man, he's becoming paralyzed, and we need to call his wife. Dr. Green says, get his wife in here because this might be the last time that they talk. So that was pretty moving, and it was very, very, that was a gut-wrenching scene. Let's see. And so his wife does come in, and they have their last few discussions. And the good news is the boy that he tried to save was going to be okay. They stopped the bleeding in his brain. So his sacrifice wasn't in vain. And then there was another scene where Dr. Weaver is showing the x-ray of Theo's spine and explaining to the cameraman that, he if the swelling doesn't stop, he's going to be paralyzed indefinitely. That was powerful. The whole discussion between Theo and his wife and him losing function and them having to intubate him, that was powerful. There was another scene where an elderly man came in from a nursing home. I think he had a heart attack. Dr. Carter takes care of him. The man's joking about how much of a lady killer he is and how he's basically having his way in the nursing home. Everything's upbeat. Dr. Carter's laughing, and then later on in the episode, he had a heart attack and he dies. And Dr. Green runs in there and he says, "Why didn't you call me? Why didn't you call me?" He's yelling at Dr. Carter. "Why didn't you call me?" He says, "You're supposed to call me now. You changed specialties. You're back down here to this level. You're supposed to call me." And Dr. Carter says, "I'd done this before by myself. I thought it would be okay." And then Dr. Green's looking at the chart. Dr. Carter says, "Did I miss anything?" And Dr. Green says, "No, not that I can see. So you did everything right." And Dr. Carter says, "Well, here, let me sign it." And Dr. Green says, "No." He says, "I'll sign it. Get out of here." And then they film Dr. Carter walking away with his head down, knowing that he had just lost a patient. Which the way they shot that, it was very, 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 very riveting. And then finally, the way the episode ends, I'm pretty much done here, is that the camera crew had been asking, they found out what had happened to Dr. Green, that he had gotten beaten right there in the ER, and that he was dealing with the trauma of it in the aftermath of it happening. And they'd been asking him for an interview the entire time. And of course, he didn't want to talk about it. So after Dr. Carter walks away, dealing with the fact that he just lost the patient, Dr. Green says, "Do you want that interview now? I'll give it to you on the condition that you don't use that footage of what just happened to Dr. Carter." So he goes into this corner, he sits down, and he says, among other things, "The best part of my job is repairing the people who come in here, repairing them from the violence or the traumas that they've experienced." He talks about how Theo's sacrifice wasn't in vain. So he put himself in danger to rescue the boy from the gang, and the boy survived even though he was paralyzed. And then Mark talks about how he was attacked himself. There were no charges. And he states that the worst thing is that the ER was supposed to be a place to fix broken people. It was supposed to be free of violence. It was supposed to be a safe place, but now it's become an unsafe place. The world's violence has come into the ER. And then he says he's scared of losing control of what's outside. Excuse me. He says that he's scared of losing control of what's on the outside of him, things that are outside of him. But then he remarks he's also scared of losing control of what's inside of him. And then he says, "Don't cut the camera off." So that was my favorite episode. It was kind of cool because you had this camera crew following the staff around. You got to see they were recording the staff respond to the crisis situations that came into the ER pretty much every day. And then you had some scenes where, for example, Dr. Green and Dr. Ross and Carol Hathaway, they were in the break room talking, and they didn't realize they were being taped by a camera because they were talking about the camera crew and all kinds of things. But it was a really riveting episode. The janitor, what he said at the beginning, Theo suffering the paralysis, the gang coming into the ER, the little boy biting his sister, Dr. Green chewing out Dr. Carter, and then Dr. Green coming to grips with his own issues and his own worries and his own mortality. It was just a powerful episode, in my opinion. And this is just season 4. So there are 15 total seasons. So I have a lot more to binge watch. So I just wanted to do a stream on this particular episode. Sometimes you watch a TV series and there's 1 or 2 episodes that really, really stand out to you. And they're episodes that you really, really remember even 20 to 30 years later. So I was looking for this one, and I decided that, I'm going to watch this one and do a stream on it. So that's all I wanted to say. I have some other things to do, so I need to run. But the background, as you can see, that's the background of Peter Benton doing the karate chop, the karate punch. That was from the first episode. And that is a GIF and an image of Peter Benton and Eric LaSalle. That's synonymous with him now. So maybe I'll do some more live streams on ER, some of the characters, some of the writing, the interactions, and those kinds of things. But that's why I enjoy the series, and that's why this particular episode stood out to me. So I'm going to eyeball that, and I might revisit this as it goes on, because sometimes when series, when they go too long, sometimes they lose the magic, especially when the original cast slowly trickles out. So with Star Trek Deep Space Nine, you basically had the same cast in season 9 that you had in season 1. But it looks like the original cast for this, eventually they all get written out for whatever reason. So anyhow, I'm going to stop this here. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you to those of you who listened to me ramble on about this for the last 53 minutes, or those of you who will watch this on the playback. Please consider joining the Big Words LLC Newsletter. This is in the description box below. I will be talking about my book in this newsletter and what it's like to write and create content and to go into business for yourself. So everyone, enjoy the rest of your Monday. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Take care, and I'll talk to you the next time. I'm going to leave you guys with Peter Benton doing his karate jiu-jitsu punch.